G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Trewin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing James Ashford from Go Proposal, based in beautiful Yorkshire, United Kingdom. Thanks for your time today, James.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Troy.
Let's start with how we know each other. I'm addicted to John Warrillow's Built to Sell radio podcast. I listen to 3 or 4 episodes a week, and you were, I think, around episode 320 or something, and I asked you to, I stalked you on LinkedIn and asked you if you'd come on the cast.
Yeah, that's cool.
Tell our audience a bit about your business. A bit of a twist because you actually don't have the business anymore and you're not really in business these days, but I think your journey will be excellent for the audience to hear. So tell the audience a bit about what Go Proposal is or was and how it makes money.
Yeah, so Go Proposal was pricing and proposal software for the accounting industry. So I'd kind of developed some proposal software and it kind of meandered in various businesses, but only was kind of solving that problem for individual businesses. And then I solved the problem for an accountancy firm. And it was only when another accountancy firm heard about it and said, how are they doing that? How are they doing what they're doing? And that was the spark that kind of led it to become a commercial piece of software.
Because from memory, listening to you on John's cast, it was like these people would get the proposals out soon after leaving the meetings, which really impressed the prospects and helped with the conversion.
Yeah, in actual fact, during the meeting was the goal. So the goal was, how could we get the most junior member of staff to produce a proposal for the most complicated client and to do it whilst they're sat in front of the client? And the analogy for this is like if you go for a meal at a restaurant, you can have a very junior waiter or waitress come to your table. You can have the most complicated table or the most complicated meal, and they can all sell you that really quickly, very precisely, without having to go and consult the head chef, who's the busiest guy in the place, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you go to an accountancy business, a solicitor's firm, whatever, and that is not the case. The person speaking to you will not be able to price and sell you the services. They'll have to go back and consult someone very senior. And literally, I was like dealing with top 100 firms here in the UK, and I'm like, how do you price? And it was alarming, right? People would come back into the office and say, hey guys, we've got a client out here. They look like this. They've got this size business, this number of staff. Have we got any other clients similar to them? What are we charging them? Let's charge something similar for these guys. That was literally the pricing model.
Wow. And one, it's speed, like getting the proposal quicker, so it will increase conversion, but also the lowering the cost. You don't need to go to the partner or the senior accountant. That's genius.
And the other bit on that, Troy, is that people are always nervous about having a pricing conversation. So I'm going to tell you it's going to be however much, $1,000 a month. And that might be like 3 times more than you're currently spending. So I'm nervous about telling you it. So what everyone does is they'll say, I'll send you a proposal through. So you now leave the meeting and leave that focus space, right? And you're going to be on a school run or in a meeting or dealing with some shit or whatever. And I'm now going to try and call you a week later and say, hey, did you get the proposal? And you're now heads in a million other places. I won't hear back from you for 2 weeks. Then I'll assume it's because I've charged you too much. So I'll ring you and say, hey, should we lower the price, whatever? And it's like, look, you've got to have the pricing conversation at some point. So we might as well have it now face to face as adults while we're in the focused zone. Or I'm going to try and do it over a protracted period whilst you're really busy. Makes no sense.
And how did you start out? The audience got to hear the 50 businesses you tried before you got to this one that I heard on you say on John's cast.
Yeah. So my parents were like just proper grafters, but work for big companies. My mum ran an old people's home, and my dad was a computer engineer. They worked for big companies, proper, incredible work ethic, both of them. Didn't see a lot of them growing up. They'd be out doing things. And then kind of got shafted on the pensions. My dad lost half his pension because the company had screwed it up. And then my mum, who had out of all of the old people's homes in the chain, of which there were like 30, hers was the only one with a waiting list. It was like the number one in the entire company. And when she left, they quibbled over her last month's pay and I think gave her a plant. And I had aunties and uncles and kind of saw people in my neighborhood who ran businesses, and the parents and my aunties and uncles just seemed a bit more relaxed, had nicer cars, went on holiday a bit more. And I just thought, I want to run a business, because to me, a business was freedom of choice, freedom of money, freedom of time, if you could get it right, you know. And so I was always looking for a business opportunity, always looking for that £1 million idea, I guess, right the way through. Like, my first one was going to be creating rabbit hutches. So a girlfriend at the time was probably 15, and she bought this beautiful white fluffy rabbit. I said, hey, I'm going to build a rabbit hutch. This is it. This is where we're going to go, right? So I made the rabbit hutch, but I used the wrong wood treatment on it. And the next day the rabbit was dead, and that relationship didn't kind of go beyond that. And just tried many different things. I was always interested in designs, and so product design was the only thing I went to university to study that to master's degree level. And so a lot of the things were around physical products that I was trying to create and to try and build a business around. I was a magician for a number of years, a close-up magician. And then off the back of that, I built an online magic course called Magic Dad, which was the 9 magic tricks that every dad needs to learn so that their kid thinks they're magical, right? So we launched that on, it was an app, and it kind of worked for a little bit, but then Apple changed how you had to code it, and it kind of fell apart. But all of these different things, like Steve Jobs talks about this, in that looking forward, they make no sense, all of these different things. And all I was using was, this feels like a good path to go down. This is kind of lighting me up in some way. The energy feels right this way. So I'll be a magician. I worked in prisons. I, did an online magic course, whatever it may be. It just felt the right thing to do. And only looking back can I kind of connect the threads and see how all of those things got me to the point of when I launched the business. People said I was an overnight success. They hadn't seen how long and dark the night had been. Like, for years, this is a good phrase. It's not mine. I stole it. But for years, I thought I was buried, right? With the weight of the world on me, I felt buried. It's only looking back that I realized I've been planted. And when I made that breakthrough, it looked fast, but it's because of all the things I've been doing underground for so long.
Well, is that truism? It takes 20 years to become an overnight success.
Yeah. And who's the guy? Is Australian, Brad Sugars, the action coach guy. I remember going and seeing a talk from him, and he said, it's going to take you 10 years to build a successful business. I'm like, fuck, that's a long time. And he said, yeah, but it's better than never. And I thought, fair play. And I just got my head down. And from that point, it was about 10 years.
And so what year did you start Go Proposal, and how old were you then?
2016. So it's like 8 years ago. So 37 at the time.
And do you have any key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business?
Yeah. So I'd had a business prior to that, a few years before, that was a marketing agency, and that was the first business that kind of had real traction, and it failed. And it failed because we didn't invest fully into the finance function of that business, didn't have sight of the numbers, etc. And so when we started this business, I was really keen to make sure that all of the numbers and everything was really tight. Didn't want to borrow any money. So we took no investment at all. And we had a major competitor at the time, again from Australia, called Pratt's Ignition, who'd had, I think, $26 million of investment at that time, a head start of us. But I refused to take any investment. I thought, I'm just going to be really resourceful in terms of how we're going to market, how we're going to grow. The accountancy firm where the product was kind of first incubated, I gave him 10%. The accounting firm where the product was first incubated and developed, I gave him 10% of the business in exchange for me getting 10% of his accountancy firm. And that, it was great from a marketing point of view, because it mean I could stand on stage, and rather than being this dickhead who's not an accountant,
Yeah.
not from the accounting industry, like no one knows who the hell I am, I can say, as the director of the accounting firm, as the director of the firm, and I can talk about that, and it gave me instant credibility, right? So we never took any investment, owned 90% of the business. We scaled it to I think it was about £1.5 million in revenue when we came to sell. And And so that was over a 5-year period. Once we got over £1 million in revenue, Troy, that was when we started to get interest from other companies saying, could we, could you buy us? Could we buy you? Um, and my wife and I had this number in our head. We'd done it with a financial planner, which was how much money do we need to live the rest of our life, a really good life without ever having to earn again. And that number was £5 million. So if we could get to a £5 million exit, we would then have enough to live comfortably. So anything over that was game on. And we got really close to the financial planner. And he said, if you get offers over that amount, I will force you to pull the trigger. You will be pulling the trigger at that point. So like reassured my wife, don't worry if he kind of thinks he's going to take it to the next level and the next one. He's not. We'll be pulling it at that point. So that was the commitment we'd made to each other. And after 5 years with £1 million in revenue, we started to get offers over that amount. We got 3 offers and they all fizzled to nothing. And so I was kind of a bit dejected. It was just going into Christmas. And then I saw another business sell. It was just after COVID, this. I saw another business in our space, similar size, sell. And I just thought to myself, what if this is the right time? So my analogy I was telling people was, it's like no one's asked you to the prom. The prom's coming, but you know what? Let's just put on our best suit and let's just go and ask the girl out. Like, what's the worst that can happen? So we went to an M&A company and I thought, let's just go for it. And if it doesn't play out, we'll to get our heads back down. We'll go another 2 years and we'll come back up again and see if now is the right time. We went for it, went work with an M&A company. They found 6 companies that would be of interest to us. We did 6 management presentations. 2 of them made an offer and one of them we took, which was for an 8-figure exit.
That's phenomenal, James. Well done. That's amazing.
Yeah, thanks, man.
And also that you weren't tempted to stay in, like you committed that to your wife. As I said before we hit record, one of the things on John's show notes page that I loved, one of the bullet points there from your episodes with him was build a successful business without destroying your marriage.
Yeah, and that was, like I took my kids to school this morning. Even throughout all that business growth, I took my kids to and from school almost every day. I reckon 95% of the time, attended every parents' evening, every sports day. They were just non-negotiables. Very much there. I probably mentally, I wasn't always there. I don't know how much they knew that, but I was quite good at giving the impression that I was there, even though my head's solving a million.
You're a magician, so surely you can do that, or use the Jedi mind trick.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that's it. So, and occasionally you're off and you're a bit short-tempered or whatever, but I was always quick to correct that with my kids and say, look, guys, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have kind of said that or whatever, but this is what I'm going through at the moment. I remember, so I always wanted my kids to kind of know what was happening at all times because I wanted them to come on the journey with me. And I remember when I went through the due diligence process, which was, man, it was so hectic. I've never experienced anything like it. And there was this 1 week, we were getting close towards the end, and I'd answered, I think, about 50 questions on this sheet. But some of those questions warranted 30-page answers. Like it was a thorough process, right? And my wife and kids were in the car, literally in the car. I could see them out the window. We're going to Center Parks for the weekend, which is like a log cabin with swings and shit in the woods, right? I pressed send on the email and I was getting up and I don't know why, but I pressed refresh on my inbox as I was getting up and I saw a question come in from the solicitors, a question come in from the tax people, and I just sat back down and went, fuck. And my son heard me and he came in. He's like, what's up, Dad? I said, I've just answered all these questions and now they want me to answer all these. And he said, yeah, but they do want to give you a lot of money. So why don't you just get on with it? And I was like,
that's
yeah,
great. That is
point.
Genius. Wow. That's great. Just going back, I'm because you started 2016. I'm just really surprised there wasn't a lot of competitors out there nailing this, or even like the accounting firms like Sage, QuickBooks, Xero, etc. I would have thought this kind of feature would have been built into even those platforms, or there would have been established competitors that you were up against.
So Practice Ignition were the main ones, and they were good because they were big. They'd been in the space longer than us, and they'd had a lot of investment, and they were up for a fight, and they were quite aggressive towards us in some points. and we handled that aggression well. I think there's one specific story I can tell you. And then there were a few, 3 or 4 other things in the space, but what none of them had really figured out was that the software is only one part of it and only a small part of it. Like most businesses are kind of averse to selling because we've all got bad experiences with salespeople. You've all been sold some shit you didn't need, got locked into some contract, right? So you don't want to sell, and whatever job you're in, you think that selling is beneath you. So if you're an accountant, you've been qualified as an accountant, you've got all this shit, all these letters after your name, selling is down here. And what I had to do was re-educate people in that, no, selling is the highest skill that you can develop, right? Selling is your ethical obligation. And what I had to do was to really break down their belief system, challenge their mindset, get them to believe they're worth what they're worth, right? And so many people in the space just weren't charging enough or would discount. And when you get into the psychology of why you discount and the problems that the discounts causes, the moment you understand that, you'll never do it again, right? So the software was one component, but the bigger component was all of the educational content. And this was where all of the learning I'd got from developing videos and all of my experience of all them failed businesses and how to help businesses and how to get them through issues all came to the fore. I was producing a video a day on social media. No one could get close to me in terms of the content I produced. I was turning stuff around fast. I'd go to a Xerocon event, right? And they'd have it all filmed with all these cameras and shit. And it would get published 2 or 3 weeks later. If the event finished at 5 p.m., my video would be published at 6 p.m.
Wow.
Like people just couldn't move at the speed I was moving at. And then I wrote a book called Selling to Serve, which was a good book to start with. I knew how to turn it into a bestseller. I knew how to promote it. But then over the years, as it evolved, I may say this, but it became a great book because I got all of the learning from what I'd got from the industry over the years and really worked that into it. And one of the best comments I got when I announced that I was leaving the industry after I'd sold the business, etc., was this guy. And he messaged me, he posted it publicly, and he said, James, I want to thank you so much for the impact you've had on my business. It's changed my business, changed my life, made me so much more money, grown my business, etc. And I never even bought your product. Right? And I was like, didn't you? I thought you had. I thought you were a subscriber, right? Because we were just connected and we'd always message each other on LinkedIn. He never, ever bought our product. And to my mind, that was the biggest stamp of approval that everything we had done was right, which is give it all away. Educate people, help people, even if they don't want to buy your shit. What most people do is they say, oh, yeah, we're doing educational content, want to help people. And it's like bullshit. You're doing educational content to the extent that that person will buy from you, but you're stopping short. You daren't give it all away. That's not, you're giving 99% away, right? We gave 100% away. When I gave a talk at a conference or whatever, like I used to say a prayer beforehand, which was, I pray I'm able to help one person move 1 degree closer towards their goal. It was never around, I pray I can sell some shit to people. It was, I'm just here to help people today. And if they want to buy us, fantastic. So I think whilst there were competitors, no one was aligning people's mindset with what the difficulty was, which was how do you get people to use a sales tool effectively when they look down on that?
Yep, that's a really good point. And especially in this day and age of authenticity, particularly in marketing, that is just going to get so much more traction. If you're genuine, I want to help people, it's going to come back in spades. Just to close the numbers out, to illustrate the growth of the business, number of full-time equivalent team members you started with and what you get to when you sold.
It was just me to start with, and I had 2 external developers, one main one here in the UK, and then a guy in Australia. And that was my team. And now I always remember we got the kind of the MVP of the product released, and I had all these ideas of how to develop it. And my developer turned around and said, right, I can give you Wednesday afternoons moving forward. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I've got all this shit that needs developing. He says, no, Wednesday afternoons all you get him, unless it's kind of a code black. We kind of had a code black, code red, like different scenarios of like you've been hacked, the website's down, people can't pay, whatever. He said, if it's any of those scenarios, I'll jump on it anytime, night or day, weekend, whatever. It's not a problem. I'll have it fixed within an hour. But if it's this, then it's going to be a 4 hour. But if it's this, you have to wait till Wednesday. Really pissed me off. Turned out to be the best thing that could happen, because what it meant was I couldn't just overburden the product with all this shit that I had in my mind that I wanted to do and all these feature requests. So what we started to do with feature requests from our customers was ignore them and not even write them down, right? And then the only ones we'd listen to were the ones that kept bubbling back up to the surface and you keep hearing over and over again. That was the only one we paid attention to. So I started off, that was my team to start with, and I was doing client support. I designed the entire product. I built the website. I was doing the videos. I could do a video, record a video, edit it, create the blog post, and create the social media post within an hour, from pressing the camera to publishing on everything.
Wow.
And built the email content within 1 hour. By the end of it, we had 3 years of email nurturing campaigns built into the system. So if you opted in for a lead magnet or something, for 3 years, every week, you would get email content. And some of those emails could be 1,000 words long, right? And people would come to me at events thanking me for the emails that I've been sending them, because they were all just, I'm just going to help you. There's educational content. And it might be a PS if you're ready to sign up, or PS if you're ready to upgrade. That's all it would ever be in the footnotes. I then did my first ad for a client support, because what we wanted was world-class support. People think that with a SaaS business, it's software as a service. But to my mind, we're giving the service. We just happen to provide software as part of that. So I really wanted to be very human-centered with what we did. And so I put an advert out, and a mate of we set the business up in Manchester. I'm here in Yorkshire, which is, we're divided by the Pennines, if you kind of know the geography. And there was a war once upon a time between Yorkshire and Lancashire. So there's some history there that normally plays out through football teams now. But anyway,
Yeah.
But there is a divide. So I set the business up in Manchester because that's where the accountancy firm was. And I did an advert, and a mate of mine rang me up. He said, take your advert down. I've got you the best person ever. He says, you know him. He's from back home. He's moving to Manchester. And he's a guy called Jack. And I'm like, brilliant. And I housed him in the accountancy firm. So I said, can we have a desk in the corner of the accountancy office? Because I wanted him to be submerged in the environment that we're selling to. And if someone asked him a question about how do I deal with these bookkeeping transactions, or he's like, I don't know what the fuck that means, he could go and ask somebody what that meant. So we then built the team around him. By the time we sold the business at 1.5 million in revenue, when we were meeting with these companies, I remember asking them, how many staff do you think we've got? And they said, well, from what you're putting out there, the speed at which you're developing, the level of support, the net promoter score you've got, etc., we assume it's around 50 members of staff. We had 12 members of staff when we sold the business.
That's phenomenal. 12 headcount on a 1.5 million quid. I mean, what's that in US dollars? Probably 2.2 million. So often, as John's talked about on his cast, you can work out roughly it's 100 grand US, I think, per head is so that's an amazing metric that you were, with only 12 people, you're doing 1.5 million quid.
We kept everything lean because I'm a tight bastard. That's part of it. The other one is that we were very systemized from day one, and we had playbooks for everything. So a playbook for how you're going to answer the call, with scripts on that call, with how you're going to follow up, etc. And there's a great phrase from Dr. Edwards Deming, which is whatever you expect, you have to inspect. So every process that we had, there would also be an inspection process for it. So if this was the sales script that you were meant to be saying, or the welcome call that you meant to be using on when someone signs up, we would then every month, we would kind of listen to the calls back together as a group, and we would check to make sure that you'd hit all the marks that you were meant to make. So we're very, very systemized. We use technology really well. And what people think, Troy, is that, well, if you systemize to that extent, do you not kind of stifle the team? Do you not create robots, right? And the absolute opposite is true, which is if you can remove all of the unnecessary thinking that a member of staff needs to do, which is Did I send my email? You don't have to worry about it because the system will send the email. Did I say that thing? Well, you know you're saying the thing because you have to tick it off, right? So if you can just make sure that everything is taken care of, I now free your head up to become its creative best self. So what you can now do is run experiments on a monthly basis. Members of staff will be running experiments continually to think, what happens if we do it this way? What happens if we call the client at this time or whatever? To be constantly evolving the business. And we created this concept, it's not our concept, but we termed it entrepreneurship, which is how do you get the team actively driving that business forward?
Can you say who the acquirer was in the end?
Yes, Sage. So Sage are a FTSE 100 company here in the UK, 2 billion in revenue, 500 million profit, I think they made is the last figures they published. So they're mainly in the UK, but they're in many other countries as well. So
Yeah, I think they're out here in Australia as well. Yeah.
yeah.
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
What we do as business owners is we just crack on. We rarely stop to look back and think how well we're doing. If you can kind of imagine it as a mountain climb and you get to kind of these plateaus where you stop and you can look out of the vista and take a swig of water and just kind of take a moment. As business owners, we're like, we'll slog to get up to that next bit, catch our breath, look around and go, right, crack on, let's go again. And we don't just stop and look around and look how high we've come or how beautiful this view is from here or whatever. And I don't think I did that well enough because there were many success moments on the way, and we did recognize certain ones. When my wife was able to leave her job, she was a mental health nurse in a secure unit. So these were offenders, and she'd been grabbed by the throat, kicked in the face, like her, just around horrific people. And so for her to be able to leave that was a big successful moment because then she could invest more in the kids and be fully there. So that was a success moment. Buying the house we wanted in the community we wanted. It wasn't a big or fancy house or anything like that, but it was near the kids' school. And I do remember this moment. So we moved into the house. So the kids were out of the catchment area of the schools. They had no friends near them. We moved into the house. And it was a really hot, sunny summer. And we walked to the park and there were people playing cricket and basketball and football. And some kids on there shouted Leo over and Leo. And he went running over to them and was playing with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sat there and I was like, we're here. And I think that was just a moment of just being able to buy the house in that area to make those decisions. That was a successful moment. If I was to do a full breakdown of the journey, there were many success moments on the way, me being backed out of the business. So that the final year when we sold, even if we hadn't sold, that year was called Kill the King year. So I was being killed off in that year anyway. We had an ops director in place. We'd remove most of the tasks from me. We'd stop me interfering as much as possible because I was still interfering with shit. In the book Multipliers, they call it an accidental diminisher, where you are accidentally diminishing the team. So if I was CC'd into an email with other team members, I'd be the first to reply. In a quarterly planning session, I'd be the one giving the answers to stuff. And you're depriving people from growth. You're stopping your team from developing and making their own mistakes. So I had to learn strategies to stop doing that. So the moment where the business fully not only ran without me, grew without me. That was the thing. And the ultimate test of that was that the due diligence process, I think it was around maybe 7 months, I think it was, due diligence process. Well, for that period of time, I was 100% on the sales process, 0% on the business. Heather, the ops director, was 50% on the sales process, only 50% on the business. And I always remember we closed in the September and everything was done. Everything was about to be signed off. And they said, right, just before we sign off, let's just check August figures. And what they wanted to see was that the trajectory was still being hit in the month before we'd sold, that because what we'd promised them, that predictability, that growth, and we still had the same growth level despite my not being involved in the business. And so it's so important as a business owner to get yourself out of the way as early as possible, so it not only runs with you without you, but it grows without you. I guess you then think and suspect that the ultimate success moment was the moment that you then sold the business, the money's hit the bank, fucking whatever, and the trumpeters come out and the fanfare starts and all my neighbors come out and they applaud me as I walk down the street and they carry me into my house. None of that shit happened.
Yeah. No one gives a fuck. Yeah.
No one gives a fuck. My mum rang me and said, we're having a party. And I'm like, that's like saying to a marathon runner, are we going out on the piss when they've just got over the finish line? And it's like, no, I'm just going to fall asleep. And it was actually the lowest moment, really, Troy. And I've heard sports people say this in that, I watched a video of Johnny Wilkinson when they won the World Cup.
Oh, don't talk to me about that. That was on my birthday. That was on my 30th birthday. So that was 2003, 22nd of November, wasn't it?
Kicked the winning goal.
Bastard.
And then he dreamed of that moment as a kid. He'd rehearsed it with his brother playing, and he woke up the next day and felt the lowest he'd ever felt. And I can completely relate to that because we achieve these goals, and partly is because they're driven by ourselves, that we think we should do this or this will give us this. But also there's external pressures, which is, someone of your age or someone of your success should have a house like this, drive a car like this. The concept of being a millionaire, like that's a thing. And so we have all these goals imposed on us that we think we should get to. We think we should have that watch, all this bullshit, right? And because deep down, we think that when we get those things, I'm going to feel differently in some way. I'm going to feel this way. And I got those things and I felt no different. And it's such a letdown because you think I've just been sold this lie. I've been pursuing this thing that, in the West, especially, we're all feel that this is what material wealth looks like. This is what success looks like. I got there, didn't feel any differently. And then you have to start asking the question of, well, what's the feeling I'm trying to change? Where is it coming from? What's not complete within me? What do I now, and how do I fulfill it? And so my head just went kind of like on a downward spiral. So I guess the moment that you think would be the ultimate success point was probably my lowest success point, in all honesty.
Yeah, the longest study on happiness, I think it's gone for around 80 years now. It's a Harvard study. In the 40s or 50s, they started tracking people each year or every second year that asked them these standard questions from all walks of life. I think it was around in New York somewhere, from tradies through to doctors and accountants, etc. And they studied this, for many decades. And the answer is the key to happiness is relationships. So it's your friends, your family. If you've got strong relationships, you spend quality time with people, that's what makes you happy. It's not money.
Yeah. And the experiences that you have with them.
Yeah.
And you don't need a lot of cash.
No.
To be able to do this. And in actual fact, one thing is that you think when I get this amount of money that it'll solve all my problems. And what I realized was it solved all my immediate problems, my immediate financial problems, and created far more bigger problems than I hadn't anticipated. And people not knowing that would say, well, I'd rather have them problems than the ones I've got. And you're like, I don't know if you would actually. Like, they're actually quite stressful. I felt more stress since having it than not having it, and had to work through that shit. And no one's going to give you any sympathy. I don't fucking need any sympathy for it, but
I just want to go back to a point you made earlier about entrepreneurs, business owners out in our DNA. It's like go, go, go. I was actually just talking about this morning because I'm terrible at celebrating success. So I've actually got to put things in place. And I was talking with one of the businesses in our program today about, right, so looking at the sales numbers, doing terrific on online e-commerce kind of forward drive accessory business. And they're doing much better than what they thought they would. So they'll close the financial year above their stretch target. And I said, so what are you going to do to celebrate when you hit that number? And then another number we were talking about. And the founders said, oh, well, if we hit this number, if we do I think it was $1 million in a month, which is some time away, but he's going to fly the team to the US and, just go to some big four-wheel drive. Because particularly for me, I think I use the DISC profile, behavioral model profile. So I'm a high D extrovert, task orientated. So I'm all go, go, go. Why the fuck are we standing around talking, people? There's another mountain to climb. I can see it over there and it's fucking higher than the one we're standing on. So let's go. But you've got to take those moments. And I have been very poor at it, but getting much better at it. So I think that's really important for some business owners, particularly wired the way that I am, that you put things in place to recognize milestones and celebrate with your team, even though that's may not be something natural to you. It's really important.
Yeah. And I think just thinking about that, there was one moment where we went to Lapland, and like it'd been a dream, and then my wife's sister and her family were going, and I rang Paul up, my business partner. I think I'd had a couple of drinks, and Becky just told me about this, and it was like early December, so like we was getting close to it, and I said, "Do you think we've got enough money in the bank for us to be able to me take my family to Lapland this year?" And he said, "If you don't take them to Lapland this year, what's the point? Like, what are we doing any of this shit for?" So I've got shivers as I've just said that actually. And I rang Becky and I said, "Book the trip. Let's go." And and it's those moments and those memories that were kind of life changing. And like you say, back to relationships and experiences. That's how where you find that success.
Yeah. And as I said to you before we hit record, I'm quite passionate about, especially in the pub after a couple of beers, I can get quite vocal on this point, but small business owners thinking I need to generate tens of millions of dollars of wealth, etc. And they slog their ass out for years, working long hours, quite stressed out. They sell their business, got, several millions of dollars in the bank, turn around and say to the family, right, now let's spend some time together. Let's go on trips and holidays and whatever. And they go, we don't know who you are. We have no rapport with you. We don't actually want to spend any time with you. So I think knowing what number, as you and your wife did early on, to say that you'd be comfortable with, I think is really, important.
Yeah, and I think on the way as well, Troy, like I would try and be at home as much as possible. I would not go on any trips that I didn't need to. And if I went on any trips, I would always instruct my PA, get me back as fast as you can. Like if there's an after party after a show, I'm not going to it. Just get me on the first train back home, so I want to be with my family. And my wife kept me in good. We've been friends since school, so we know each other really well. And she kept me in good stead, which is, look, you could take it bigger. Everything good comes at a cost. That's the truth, right?
Yep.
And so you can take it bigger, but the question is at what cost, And so we concluded that the effort to cost ratio worked to the point we got it. I could have taken it further, could have taken it longer, but it would have been at a big cost. And like now, I'm still kind of going backwards and forwards with what I should do next, if I should do anything. But my youngest turns 13 tomorrow. We've just been discussing at breakfast, actually. She becomes a teenager, but I think there should be two stages of teenagers. Like, because a 13-year-old teenager is different to a 19-year-old teenager. So I feel we need like two terms to define that. And Leo turns 14 next week, on Sunday, sorry. So they're really young. And for the next, like, Leo still wants to play football with me. Scarlett is happy to go to the shop with me. Like, but that's not for very long. And I always think, like, when I speak to business owners, one of my first questions I'll say is, have you got kids? Because what people don't realize is that, like, I had two young kids and a startup. So I've got three startups fucking running, right? And they all need attention. All three startups. I can't have any of them fail, especially the kids, right? So you got three startups that you're running. So when I would speak to business owner, if I speak to business owners, I'll say, how many kids have you got, and what's their age? Because there's some logical milestones, which is like in the UK here, when they're 4 years old, they're going to be going to primary school. When they're 11 years old, they're going to be going to secondary school. When they're 15, 16 years old, they're going to be wanting to spend as much time with you. When they're 18, they're going to university. Like, you can plot these milestones out and you can build your business goals around those events there, because the point of that business is to give you the life that you want. And if the business isn't giving you the life that you want, it's actually taking from it, then to my mind, it's defeating the object.
Totally agree. And another study I read years ago is that greatest bond between the parents and their child is generally created before they're 8 or 9 years old. So I deliberately took Mondays off years ago when Maggie was, 4 or 5, and we called it Mondays with Maggie. It's really, really important. I think some parents miss that. Some owners, sorry, miss that. And I've had a few guests on, actually. They got quite emotional around John Stagg was one, saying that they'd moved back from London, bought a restaurant here in Hobart. He was working ridiculous hours, some nights sleeping in the fucking restaurant. And he said his biggest regret was missing their first kids, that age of growing up, missing all the sports stuff. It's just, yeah, it can be overlooked.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What does success look like to you?
It's a good question, and I've asked myself it, and I remember getting told off for giving the first answer I gave, which is like fulfilling everything within inside you. That was what I used to think success was. Like you've got this vision of what things could be, and getting as close to that vision was success. And I remember this guy saying to me, "That's the worst definition of success I've ever heard, and that's just going to keep you in pain." And then he defined to me as success is just progress, like making meaningful progress. I still struggle with that, because you do have this vision inside you of what things could look like. Like we've just bought this house here now, Troy, and we've been doing it up for a year. I mean, this is kind of a cinema room and podcasting room. I had a beautiful garden done, and it's a lovely, lovely house. Like if someone had said to me 20 years ago, "This is where you're going to be living. This is what your family's going to look like. You're going to have a gym, you're going to have a sauna, all this stuff," I'd be like, "Oh my, unbelievable." We've had it built, and the moment I moved in, I'm like, could have just done with a few acres of more land. The cinema room could just be a bit bigger. We can only fit 6 people in here. What if we had more people here? And in the only way I can look at it is how can this be better, right? And it's a curse of an entrepreneur, because as an entrepreneur, I'm a creative. Like there's different types of entrepreneurs. Me, I'm a creative. I'm probably an artist. Is where my pendulum swings, and so you always look at things and think, how can this be better? The real balancing act, and I've not got this right, is how can you look at something and think, how can this be better? What's the best version of this that it could be? And how can I be so grateful with everything I have right now as well? And I saw this thing the other day, which was like when you're in pain, and I do feel anxiety at times, and, you know, I do feel stress. And when we're in stress, it's because you're focusing on things you can't control. You're focusing on things that you don't have. You're focusing on the future and worrying about it. And you're focusing on the past and regretting it. And when we're at peace and in joy and happy, it's because we're focusing on the things we can control. We're grateful for what we have, and we're in the present. And that is success. If you could do that, only focus on things you can control, be grateful for everything that you have, and be here right now. And there's not many activities that bring you to the now. You know, I've got a friend of mine, when I sold the business, he rang me, he said, "How often do you feel alive?" So what do you mean? He says, "How often are you here and really feel alive?" I'm like, "I don't know." And he said, "When you're on a motorbike, it's all the fucking time. Meet me at the motorbike garage." So he took me to the motorbike garage, and he says, "Right, let's choose a bike for you." And I picked one, and I told my wife what I was doing. She says, "You're not having a motorbike." She says, "You can upgrade your car, but you're not getting a motorbike." But there's activities. Martial arts is one. Fighting is one. Eating is one. You know, there's certain things in sports where you're fully in that moment, but it's hard as an entrepreneur to do it because your head's just spinning with all the shit, and you're in a constant state of paranoia of thinking what can go wrong. Where is this all going to fall down, and what can I do to prevent it?
Yeah, that the paranoia and stress comment reminds me of one of my favorite Mark Twain quotes, which is, "I've had many troubles in my life, of which some actually happened."
Yeah.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
So I'm a firm believer of educational marketing. The best analogy I can give of that is celebrity chefs. So you look at like someone like Gordon Ramsay, you know, Ramsay Holdings, I think he's worth $1 billion or whatever. He's got restaurants all over the world. Yeah, he goes on TV, he shows you how to cook his food, he gives you his recipes, he goes and shows you how to set up restaurants like his. You've even bought his recipe book, you've cooked one meal from it once. Yeah, if you walk past his restaurant, you'd go in and buy his food, right? People are scared to give everything away because they think that people are going to copy you and do you out of business. It doesn't work like that. Knowledge has no value in the world anymore. Google put pay to that largely. Chat GPT has ended it. Knowledge has no value. Doing shit with the knowledge is where the value is, and taking action, right? And so, to my mind, educational marketing and genuinely trying to serve an industry, trying to serve a space and to champion something. So the thing I wanted to champion was I wanted to help accountants to get their clients to fully invest in the market, into the finance function of their business, so they could avoid the mistakes that I'd made in my previous business. So I wanted to help accountants to fully serve their businesses that they were serving. That became my mission. And I did that through books, through videos, through speaking on stage. I was none of this is a brag. This is just showing you the extent we pushed it. So my book, Selling to Serve, is the highest rated book on Amazon in the world in the accounting industry. I was the top rated speaker at QuickBooks events, every event I spoke at for a number of years. Our webinars would get the most number of people on them. We would get 600 people book onto our webinars. 400 people would turn up. We had our marketing spend was £1,000 a month.
Wow.
£1,000 a month.
Yeah.
Our cost of acquisition was, I think, £15, I think, or slightly less than that, for a client.
Mm.
And so what it meant was, because our cost of acquisition was so low, we could invest so much into you once we got you. Yep. So, for example, Troy, once you signed up so imagine you've signed up for us, right? So you would sign up for a SaaS product, as you would any other SaaS product for your business, proposal software for your accountancy firm. My team would log into your app straight away. They would go and get your logo off your website. They would go and try and find testimonials on your website. They would get your colors, your fonts. They would put it into the proposal, and they would send you a proposal, and then they would phone you up, a human being calling you, saying, "Hey, Troy, I'm just ringing to thank you for signing up for the app. I've just sent you your first proposal. I've got all your logo and everything in for you. I'm just ringing to see if there's anything else I can help you with while I'm on the phone." Like, just dead friendly. 2 days later, you would receive in the post a physical gift, which we call our shock and awe pack. I came up with that name. One of my main jobs was head of bullshit wanky names to call things, right?
Yeah.
So the shock and awe pack would arrive, so beautifully packaged up with a signed copy of my book, a golden ticket to join the community, an onboarding document that would show you what your onboarding journey is going to be like over the next 90 days. So you've got this physical gift that's landed. You've not given us any money yet. You've not even put your credit card details in yet. This would just absolutely wow people. And that was why we ended up with a net promoter score of 78, which is considered to be world-class.
It is.
So because we got the marketing so good, long-form marketing, our email nurturing campaigns, I explained before, were 3 years. So we have this long-form system that would just pull people through. Because we could keep the cost of that so low, we didn't need investment, and we could invest in the human relationship once we got you on the other side.
That's phenomenal. That's really brilliant, James. I mean, not just the CAC is 15 quid. That's phenomenal. But you've got the human touch there, which is so rare, particularly these days. But that's brilliant marketing. Well done.
And it comes down to just giving a shit. That's what it's about, genuinely caring about people for the sake of caring about them. It's like it's unconditional caring. In that you care about them whether they're your customer or not. We had a guy in Australia, his name escapes me now, but he'd been a client with us for a year, I think it was, and then he left. And he messaged me personally, and he said, "Look, I'm not leaving because there's anything wrong with the product. We're just going in this direction. But I just want to thank you for everything you've given me personally, blah, blah, blah." And I just rang him. And I'm like, "Mate, like, we can stay in touch now. Like, I'm into you. I want you to succeed. That doesn't stop just because you've cancelled your subscription. I still want you to win. Like, please stay in touch. Like, tell me how you're progressing." And that's not like a bullshit marketing thing. That's just genuinely giving a shit. And most people just don't care. And we would like be for the 5 years that I was growing the business and the 2 years that I served my my earnout period, I would ring an accountant every single day. It made me the most connected to the industry because I would ring for no reason. Like, if I was on a car journey, I would just think, who haven't I spoke to for a while? And I'd just ring them up and say, "How's it going, man? Well, like, what's happening? What's the crack?" If someone commented on a post I would get someone to track their number down. I'd call them. We had a really active Facebook community. If somebody shared a win in there that they were thanking us for this, they just achieved a 10x increase for clients' fees, or they had a challenge, I would message my team and say, get me their number. I'm going to ring him. And I would just call them and say, I'm just ringing to thank you for sharing that. Like, wow, well done. For no reason, just to speak to people. And so people don't think in terms of marketing like that. I don't believe.
Mm.
We'd go to like these Zero-Con events and Account X, which is just happening now in the UK. And our competitors, they would host these. They'd put money behind the bar and they'd have these big events where they'd bring everyone to the bar and all this shit, right? And I don't know how much it cost them. I know it was a lot of money, and it'd be for anybody, like because they're trying to use it to kind of drum up business and stuff. I'm like, fuck that. I'm not wasting money on people that aren't spending money with us. So what we used to do was a breakfast event just for our existing customers. So it's an exclusive event. We'll buy you breakfast. You're going to turn up. We're going to educate you on something. We'll use it to kind of use it as an educational piece. And we just built such great relationships with our current customers. There's no better marketing strategy than that.
No, I love it. And for the audience, Net Promoter Score, I'll include a link to a blog post I wrote about that about 14 years ago on a beach in Thailand. It's a great one question, great number, and there's a 10-minute podcast I did on how Net Promoter works. But I think the world average is about a positive 15 score. Excellent is 50 plus, and phenomenal is 70 plus. So well done, James, and to you and the team. That's amazing measurement of customer loyalty and satisfaction.
Yeah, thanks. And just one other thing as well is, like, just you understand the extent we went to when someone cancelled. If you cancel your subscription, what people do is they put the best salespeople on these calls and they'll ring them up and try and win them back, right? Our view was this: if you cancel, we would just ring you up and say, "Hey, Troy, I'm just ringing you. I've seen you cancelled to let you know all your payments have stopped. There's no more money coming out. Don't need to worry about that. And the only reason I'm ringing you is just a thank you for at least giving us a go and for being with us for the time you have. That's it." And it's like, oh, right, okay. And then 3 months later, we just drop you an email saying, "Hey, Troy, has anything changed?" It's just one of the shortest automated emails we used to send. Has anything changed? That's all it would say. And it would just start the conversation again. And what you find is that they've left, nothing's changed. Okay, do you want to pick up a conversation with us, or where are we at, you know?
And funding your business, you already mentioned, pretty much bootstrapped, didn't have other investors on, but you did give 10% away to the accountant, which I think is a genius move. Anything else on funding? You pretty much self-funded all the way through?
I'm a big believer in that being resourceful. People will blame resources. People will blame a lack of resources for not being able to progress. But Tony Robbins talks about this, which is it's normally a lack of resourcefulness. And not having money, I think, forced some of our best decisions. So like I said, our competitor was heavily had a lot of investment. And so you'd go to kind of these QuickBooks events or these big kind of, you know, exhibitions, and they would just have a bigger and better stand. So we'd have the bronze stand, and then they'd have the gold stand with fucking big flashy lights and shit. And I remember going to QuickBooks Connect in San Diego or something like that. And I remember saying to my team, "How much is this cost us?" And it was like 25, like to book the venue, to pay for the stand, get the team, their accommodation. It was like 25 grand. This was pre-COVID. I remember saying, "That's ridiculous." I said, "I could employ a full-time videographer for 25 grand and produce 24/7 content that will continue to earn us money long after it's been produced." I said, "This is the last event we're coming to. Let me find a videographer." I came back and I just started kind of searching for people in the area on LinkedIn and various other places. Found this kid. He sent me through his show reel. I'm like, "Mate, this is mint." It was a Sunday morning. I said, are you good for a call?" He said, "Give me 10 minutes. Unknown to me, he was working at McDonald's, right? So he graduated from university. He was working at McDonald's. He was waiting for his break. He came out and rang me. He was mint. Like, I'm like, "You've got," I knew he had the job just by talking to him and seeing his stuff, right? We employed him, cancelled all events. The following year, COVID hit. So all of these businesses around us that had full events-based strategy, we'd already sacked that off a year earlier, and we doubled down on web content, on uh, webinars and video content, we were going for it. And so we were ahead of it. And it's because we had no cash that forced that decision. If you have cash, it's easy to you'll spend it on shit and you'll become lazy and you won't ask enough of it. When you don't, you have to squeeze everything out of everything you've got.
Yep, totally agree. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
I don't know. I think there's a industries in the accounting industry is a logical one because we built up a big audience there, I guess. But I've seen people exit businesses and wanting to start again. And I think there can be a danger to that because you have to ask yourself, why am I doing it? And this is, I've got mentors that are working with me. I've got a guy rang me because he saw I'm about to launch a podcast. He rang me last week and he's like, what the fuck are you doing? He said, why are you putting yourself? He says, you've won the game. Why are you starting another game? What's your reason? And I came out with somewhat reasons that I thought I was doing. He said, I think that's bullshit what you're saying to me. I think this is like an ego thing, or I don't know where this is coming from. He says, we need a chat. So I've got a call with him next week to challenge why I'm about to do what I'm about to do. He says, your kids are young. Like, just invest in your kids. Let them be your business for the next 5 years and go again in 5 years. So I'm really questioning myself. So if I got a lot of funding, would I go into my industry? I don't know if I'd do anything next, and we have to ask ourselves. I think Alex Hormozy, I saw a quote from him. I'm going to get this wrong, but he just said it so beautifully. And it was like, you set yourself these goals, but you already achieved the goals that you thought would give you the thing you wanted. And you never got it. So why the fuck are you setting more goals?
Yep.
And it's like, shit, so we have to really challenge ourselves. I think, but back from a practical point of view, if you built an audience in a space, then I think it's worth to be able to serve that audience, use that audience, however you want to term it. I think there's a danger though, we're getting a load of cash because I'm a huge fan of Daniel Priestley. And he was on an interview recently.
He's an Aussie. He lives in London now, doesn't he?
Yeah. And I think I can term him a friend now. Great guy. I went skiing with him on a trip he organized recently. Really great guy. And he talks about if you've got a business idea, you want to test it as fast and as cheaply as possible. So his belief is before you write a line of code, create a landing page, outlining the premise, and drive people back to the landing page and build up a waiting list. And that's what we did with GoProposal to start with. The book was released and I was driving people back from the book to a landing page to build an audience way before we'd written the code, right? And so you want to test it quickly and cheaply before you start spending money on stuff, because the real danger, you could just be pissing money up the wall, right? But the reason why, I've thought about this a lot recently, the reason why people like to get money and to throw money at something is because they want to keep the illusion and the dream going that this might actually work. And they don't want to face the reality that it's not going to. And by getting more money, it can keep them going on with that dream. I had a friend recently, a couple of years ago, and she wanted to launch an online furniture shop. And she was about to buy all this furniture. I said, please don't buy any stock.
Yes.
Just develop your Instagram channel. Start sharing stuff from your house. Start sharing what you're doing. If you go and visit nice properties or you see something nice online, comment on it and start doing that. And eventually you'll show something in one of your videos and someone will say, where'd you get that from? Right? Then go and buy that item maybe and 5 of them and go and sell 5 of them and build from there. What does she do? Bought a shitload of stock. Why? Because she doesn't want to face the reality that this might not work. A guy messaged me on LinkedIn last week. He said, I'm seeking investment for my SaaS business. I wonder if you'd like to see the pitch deck and whether you'd like to invest. I said, send it through. So I had a look. The numbers seemed solid. It was well established. It was stacked up. And I just said, what do you want to use the money for? And he said, marketing mainly. I said, okay. So I just went on all the social platforms that they were using. And I went back and I said, I think you're missing some real opportunities with your current platform. Like you could really ramp up your socials. You probably don't even need any money to do that. Like there's some huge opportunities. He was so offended. He came back. He said, how can you judge our marketing initiatives and strategies based on looking at a few posts? And gave it back to me. And it's like, he didn't want the help. He didn't want the advice. He didn't want to any guidance. He wanted cash.
Mm.
And it's like, you just want to keep this fucking bullshit dream going. You see people all the time posting online. It pisses me off. Just had another round of investment. Just hit another. Right. What I never posted, and I wish I had, was just had another profitable quarter. Still profitable. Still making cash. Like no one, we were profitable after month 3 in our business. We were always profitable. And every year we would have the question, do we need funding? And I would say to my team, okay, imagine I've got £1 million and I've given it to you. What are you going to spend it on this year? What are we going to do differently to what we're doing right now? And the best anyone could come up with was like 250 grand's worth of initiative. Okay, I'm like, okay, well, we've got that money in the bank, so we don't need any investment. Let's just crack on.
Yep.
And so I think it's large. I think it can be used, funding, for an established. I don't think I would use funding for a startup. I think is the answer to your actual question. I think I would keep it lean as fuck, have no money, and bootstrap it until I got it to a point where it was wiping its own face. And then I would seek funding to fuel the growth of it once I'd proven it with little to no cash.
Yep. Yep. Good answer. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
There were 2 stressful moments, and both led to huge growths in the business. The first one's a bit technical, so not to get into that. The second one was, I'm going to have to be slightly technical, but I'll try and keep it simple. So within the accounting industry, there's various governing bodies. One's called the ACCA, one's called the ICAW in the UK, and there's various ones around the world. There'll be different ones in Australia. Every accountancy firm needs an engagement letter, and the governing body will give you the engagement letter as being part of that governing body, and you would upload that engagement letter into Go Proposal, and then when you produce a proposal, it will automatically configure the engagement letter behind the scenes magically, and away we go. The ACCA one day announced that the only way that their members could now get their engagement letter was if they went through our competitor, Pratt's Ignition, because they'd done a tie-up with them. So now that's the only way you can get it. I remember seeing, I got an email on a Tuesday. Like, we worry about all this shit. We spend all of our life worrying about all this shit. And then on a Tuesday morning, bang, round the side of the head, nothing you could have seen coming from a customer saying, have you seen what the ACCA and Pratt's Ignition are doing? And I just saw 25% of my current customers about to disappear.
Wow.
And 25% of my market about to go, because was the size of them. And then I thought, fuck, what if they do this with the other ones as well? Well done, guys. That's a great move. So it meant that the thing that we need in our system for any members of that governing body to produce the proposal, it just disappeared in front of my eyes. And I calmed down and I just said to myself, where is the gift? And I started asking it with certainty, and a smile, right, came, where is the gift in this? And for 2 days, I just kept walking around saying, where is the gift? And what happens is your head comes back and says, there's no fucking gift. We're going to lose the business. Okay. If there was a gift, what would the gift be? And I thought, so I went through various routes and I thought, could we produce our own engagement letter that is better than all of the engagement letters of all of the governing bodies? And legally, would an accounting firm of those governing bodies be allowed to use it? So I did some research and I found the person. This was during COVID, so you couldn't get out the door, right? It was all through email. Tracked down this person's name on this obscure website who'd actually written the engagement letters for all the governing bodies originally. Like they come from somewhere originally, and then they've been changed. And I got hold of her and I said, have you seen what's happening? She said, yeah. And I said, could you write the engagement letters for us? She said, on one condition, that you invest fully into it and you keep them up to date on a monthly and a quarterly basis, because these governing bodies just don't do that. You think they do, but they don't. So I'd only do it if you're prepared to invest fully. So you're constantly looking at changes in legislation. We're constantly developing it. And you allow me to write it in plain English. Like, can we just do it right? I'm like, I'm all in. So we created this product. We had to move quickly because I felt this leakage was coming. We turned it around in 3 months. I came up with this name for it. I branded it. I called it Oversweet. And so we launched it as a separate product. and we had all this interest. And what people do is when they do a launch of something, right? In my head, I call it like the A team launch. Do you remember the A team? Did you have
Oh
that in
yeah.
Australia?
Yep.
Yeah. You know, when they like build like they've got the bad guys to go and get, and they'd build the van and they'd put like guns and shit on it, and they'd hide it behind the door, and then the garage door would lift up and they'd drive out of it. So they're building it behind the scenes and they launch it. We're here. Well, it's the worst method you can do for launching anything. What you want to do is bring your customers along the journey with you. So they knew what we were developing, and we'd constantly be sharing things. Hey guys, we're thinking of doing this or this. Which way do you think we should go? So they were investing in it, and we'd share snippets of what we're developing and how excited we were. And then when we came to launch it, we had this massive audience ready, and they came on this call and we said, right, we've got this. It doesn't matter what governing body you can use it. And I think I rang up an accountant. This is the pricing methodology I came up with. What did we do? I think I was like, I charged 10 pounds a month with it because I didn't see it as a money earner. I just saw it as a leak preventer, right? So I did this webinar, 10 or 20 quid a month, I think I launched it for. And I had people messaging me personally on my phone who were on the webinar saying, fuck are you charging that for? It's worth like £100 a month. And I was like, shit. So I quickly on the call, I'm like, anyway, this is just an introductory offer that we are doing for the first 3 months. We'll tell you what the full price will be but it won't be alarming, blah, blah, blah. Came off the call, rang this accountant up who I knew, who was a husband and a wife team. And this was how I got to the price of it, right? I said to her, right, Penny, how much would we have to charge for you not to ask your husband whether you could sign up for it or not? What could you pull the lever on this for? And she went, if it was 40 quid a month, I'd just go for it. I wouldn't even ask him. I'm like, right, £40 a month it is. That was the entire pricing methodology. So Penny didn't have to speak to Jonathan. That was it. Because he'd bring the negativity, right? Within 6 months, that product was bringing us in 10 grand a month in its own right. When we sold the business, it added so much value, and now it's now developed into an AML, anti-money laundering product. It's expanded into that. It's potentially going to be bigger than Go Proposal in its own right, all because of a threat. Now, going back to where we find success, I could have focused on things I couldn't control, regrets of the past, what's going to happen in the future, things that we didn't have. And I could have tried, potentially there was something anti-competitive going on. Like I could have got into legal all this shit, right? I could have wasted time and energy and money being pissed off, pursuing people, whatever, rather than saying what is in my control, what can I do now, what am I grateful for, where is the gift? Where is the gift was the question that turned that situation around.
James, I love that approach, and there truly was a gift at the end of it. So that's a brilliant way to think about such a stressful moment. What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
I think one of my weaknesses is always around finances, because I'm just an optimist. Like everything will work out well, and you need someone on your finances who's a pessimist and saying why where is this? So, but I think as entrepreneurs, you don't have to strengthen your weaknesses. You just have to strengthen your strengths. There's a great story from the Chinese and American table tennis teams.
Mate, I'll cut you off there because I think did you tell this story on John's podcast? Because
maybe so. I can't remember.
I think you did because I've written about it and told quite a few people about this story. I think it's genius. So please continue.
I've got like 5 stories I tell on repeat. I try and pass them all off as my own, Troy. So yeah, I've just stolen them from people far cleverer than me. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, the Chinese table tennis team just kept beating the American table tennis team, and the American table tennis team just kept investing in coaching and training and developing themselves, just never beat them. And eventually the American coach asked the Chinese coach, like, look, I know we're arch rivals, but can you just tell us where we're getting this wrong? And the Chinese coach says, yeah, it's dead straightforward. You're trying to strengthen your weaknesses. We just strengthen our strengths. Like if we've got an amazing forehand, but a weak backhand, like I'm always going to lose on the backhand. But if I could just take my forehand from 97% to 98%, I'm always going to kill you with it. So I'm just going to strengthen my strengths. So what I've come to learn over the years is that finances, because of my optimistic mindset, and it just bores the fuck out of me. Like, show me the number that's wrong and what needs improving. I'll go fix that. I'll go solve the number. I'll bring in the sales, or I'll improve the efficiency, or whatever it needs doing. That's the bit I love, the creativity around the solving of it. But I'm not going to dig into shit. Like, I'll just glaze over. The moment that comes into the board meeting, I'm on my phone looking at my WhatsApp messages and shit, Instagram.
Yeah.
So bringing brilliant people in around finances is something I've had to be aware of me and work on. I think the biggest area that I had to work on was, like, I'm good at lots of things, but, like, as I was alluding to earlier, was that being an accidental diminisher of the team and wanting to get involved in too many things was the bit I've had to work on to get myself out of the way. Like, Heather was the operations director that came in, and she had to kind of prize things away from me, from my vice-like grip, and she took everything off me. But the only thing I wouldn't let her take was the marketing. I said, no, you can't take the marketing off. But, like, no one can do the marketing like me, right? Like, she's like, okay, well, let's just pretend I can. Let's just start with one bit. Let's try a blog post, right? You do the video and let me do the blog post from it, okay? And then you tell me where I'm getting it wrong. So she did it. I'm like, oh, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Okay. So she'd write up her notes and come back. How about now? I'm like, yeah, that's not far off, actually. If you just did this and this, and then the next one, yeah, that's it. That's cool. Okay, cool. Now show me how to write emails. You can't write emails like me. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Just show me. Like, so eventually I showed her the social posts, and there were things she couldn't do, like the video editing. So we'd bring in a video editor in that area, and a videographer, etc. Something I learned, by the way, Troy, this was really valuable, was, so I believe you need a videographer of sorts, someone who can generate videos within your business, because it's top of the tree content. If you can get a video, especially now with AI, you can now produce all of the other content off the back of it. You can produce short form content for socials. You can produce blog articles, emails, and, like, you use something like Cast Magic, or I can't remember the other piece of AI tech now, but bits like that are just incredible. But the person you want is not a videographer. You want an editor, okay? A videographer wants to be off on location, filming shit, doing all this exciting stuff, right? Filming me talking about proposal software for accountants is boring. So you want an editor, which is someone who is happy to be sat behind a computer all day, just churning shit out, and you want to train them in how to do video, so that when you then give them a gig to go and record, or an event to go and film at, they're buzzing because they've had a day out, right? But then they're happy to get back from that event and sit back down behind the laptop and just start churning shit out again. So it's the editor temperament, it's the editor you want, not a videographer. There would be unless you're building a bigger team. But anyway, so she took all of the marketing off me, and we had to build a team. There wasn't one person that replaced me. In the end, there was kind of 4 or 5 people. But we built the playbooks, we built the systems, and we documented everything. But it was accepting the fact that somebody can do this better than me. It might be multiple people can do this better than me, but people can do this better than me, and to get out of the way. That was the biggest thing I've had to work on.
Yeah, I think it's a common trap for business owners. Like I said earlier, we're control freaks in our DNA, and there's plenty of examples. I had a great guest on probably 4 years ago. She's got a dog sitting business in Canberra here in Australia, 2 sites, and she was struck down with a debilitating migraine. Like, for 6 months, she literally had to lay in a dark room, and she she had a team of 27, I think, at the time. And she thought the business was going to go backwards over that time. She literally could do nothing. And she got out. Not only had the business survived, it had thrived without her. And that was a real wake-up call for her to say, they were kind of halfway through their journey of SOPs and systematizing and getting things off her plate. But that just galvanized her to act even further, to get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah, yeah.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
I don't know, actually. That's a good question. I enjoy it when shit goes wrong. Like, that's when I light up the most. I think one thing is, and no one told me this to start with, is that being successful is boring, right? Because it requires you to just keep turning up day after day and doing the same shit over and over again for a prolonged period of time until you get there. It is fucking boring. And my nature, I want to be off on the next thing. And the only reason I hadn't achieved more success earlier is because I would get bored. Like if you want to be in incredible shape and have a great physique, it's dead straightforward. You don't even need like I was reviewing my workout this morning, and my regime now is the same shit that I was told when I was 18 years old. Like the same body split, the same boring exercises, a bench press, a deadlift, a squat. It's the same shit. I don't care what people are showing you on Instagram about what you need to do. It's just you can do the same boring shit that you need, bicep curls. Nothing's changed, right? But if you do it every single day and you eat this amount of protein and you just keep doing it day in, day out, after 3 years, you'll look like this or whatever, right? It's the same in business. I've got a friend of mine, he's a monster business owner, never read a book, never had a mentor, never done any of the shit that people say you should do. His last business that he's grown, he went from 0 to 40 million in 4 years. He's just a beast and he's just boring with it. It's in the waste industry. It's selling bins and skips to companies. And he just sells one after another and just builds a team and grinds it out. And it's that discipline, I think, that I struggled with the most.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
Working with the team, and we had a relatively junior team, and helping them to flourish, finding good people and backing them and saying, go, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to put the buffers in place so you don't fall off. But beyond that, you can bounce about in here and you can really go for it. And the operations director, Heather, I've referred to a few times, she's my niece. And she didn't get the job because she's my niece. She got the job because she's a star. And she'd worked in the VIP lounge at VIP department at Harrods in London, where you have to have £1 million minimum spend a year to be a customer there. She'd worked for a SaaS business, but I'd seen her from a young age, just mega, just a proper grafter, right? And we're at the races at a birthday party, her birthday, and I just overheard her saying, she's moving to Manchester. And I turned my chair around. I said, you moving to Manchester, yeah? And she said, is this a job interview? I said, it is now. And she said, what's the job? I said, I don't fucking know. I just want you. Like, we'll figure the job out later, right? And so she started working. She started working with me, and I knew she was a star. And just to give her the space to just grow and to shine and to challenge me, and we had moments over the years. We had tears over the years and all of this, but and with other people as well, because we were never afraid of having adult conversations. So many businesses will make assumptions and they're not, they're too afraid just to sit down and say, I never had it with her, but I did have it with other members of staff, which is, look, this is what your behavior has been like over the last couple of weeks. And if it carries on for one more day, the next time I sit down with you will be to sack you. Do you understand that? Like, just to be dead straight with, even, and that was with the most senior member of staff who's been with me a while. Like, I'm just going to tell you how it is. Because if you don't do that, you're not being fair to people. And so if you have that environment where I'm going to have an adult conversation if I need to, I'm going to tell you exactly how it is. But beyond that, I'm going to give you the space to flourish. And every year when it comes to pay rise, I'm going to let you choose your pay rise for the next year. Right? So you tell me what you want me to pay you next year based on the value that you're going to bring to this business, and you present it back to me. And we did that every year. And so back to this concept of entrepreneurship, where most businesses have employees who they don't have any control. They can't grow the business. They can't move anything. They can't affect their own salary. They can't do any of these things. To be in a space where I'm saying, you can shape this business, you can steer it, and you can get paid what you want based on the value that you can bring. Let's go. So to create that entrepreneurial space with the team, and as part of the deal, the team benefited from the deal. There was a percentage of the sale of the business that went to to team members that they got after 3 years, and to sit with them and to share that with them was the most. I got shivers thinking about it. It was the best part. It was far better. I'm going to sound like a prick saying this. People might fuck off, then when I got the cash myself in my bank, the feeling of being able to sit with these team members and saying, this is what you're going to get, these life-changing amounts, was literally the part that lit me up the most. Because all I've been able to say to them is, you're going to have a great story at the end of this. Like, you're going to have a great story. And they had to believe me that they would, and they all got the great story. And Heather's now, I mean, she's absolutely flying. She finished her earn-out period. She had an earn-out period. She's left Sage. She's now like dominate. You can go and check her out. She's really worth checking out. She's called Heather Elkington, and she kind of a piece that she's talking to is kind of leadership within business, but specifically like she was a young leader. She was like 25-year-old woman in a largely male-dominated environment, older, grayer haired, male-dominated environment, and she was just mega. At the time, I was watching Game of Thrones. Did you watch Game of Thrones?
Oh, years ago.
I can't what she's called, Alana, and she was like a queen of one of the territories, and she was like 10 years old, but she was like fierce.
Yeah, I
And I just
remember
think, yeah, why can't a 10-year-old
that.
fit girl be why can't she be a ruler? That's amazing. And when I used to see Heather, I used to think, why can't you be the leader in this space? Let's go for it. And she now shares all of our leadership training and marketing. She's doing really well. She's just been offered a massive book deal. Like, she's just doing brilliant. She's just a real force.
James, I just want to comment on something. That part of my job is, even though my daughter says I'm a shit communicator, which we have many arguments about, a big part of my job is communication, listening to people, understanding what they're saying, and not just with the businesses we work with and help, but I sit on 4 boards, chair most of those boards. So a lot of it is influencing people and getting the right decisions, etc. But a big part of that's listening. And something I've really noticed in our conversation is the way, and you're very genuine about this, I think, is that it shits me when people say my staff, sorry, but you talk about your team members as team members, not staff, not as employees, but and you've clearly looked after them as part of the exit as well. So I think that's worth pointing out.
Yeah, we were really in that together, and I did feel that we were part of the team, and that I was there to serve them. I was there to help them to develop and to mentor them and to help them to grow. And the word flourish is, I've got this thing um that I've thought about for some time, and I had a mentoring session, and he kind of asked me this question, which was like, when do you get emotional? And there's this thing that makes me cry, right? I just instantly just go douche every time. And it's I don't watch much TV, but like X Factor or Britain's Got Talent or Australia's Got Talent, whatever these bullshit shows are, right? But occasionally you get someone on there, some kid, and they might have some bad backstory, they might have been bullied or whatever, or some older person that's been singing in the shower or whatever, but they just have this belief that maybe they have something and they go and sing, but they're insecure about it, and they sing and like it's amazing, and then they hit the golden buzzer on them, and like there's this one kid that he sings this amazing song from Waitress, the musical Waitress, and Luke Islam is called, and they hit the golden buzzer on him, and he just collapses to the floor in that moment that someone said, like, he gets the validation that he's always wanted, and it's just to say, you're good enough, you are good enough as you are, like, I back you. You don't have to prove anything to me. Just go for it. Like, to hit that golden buzzer on team members who have not been given the space before to say, look, I think you're mega. Like, let's just go. And we did it with our customers as well. But that was the bit. And you'd just be amazed at how far people can go and the efforts they will go to when you do that with somebody. And I always remember, like, we used to have a bonus scheme in Go Proposal. It was a share of profits if we hit certain targets and various things. And we got to the end of COVID, everyone was working remotely. And I remember looking at the team and thinking, I can't imagine any of you working any harder than you have. Like, you've just all gone above and beyond. Everyone had to step up. We all had to do shit. And we grew through that time, And at the end of it, I said, look, I'm not going to dangle this bonus anymore in front of you. It's not fair. I'm rolling it into your salaries. Like, I'm backing you up front. I know you're going to deliver. I know you're going to do this. I can't ask any more of you. I'm backing you up front. Let's go. And again, people just step up and rise, and just genuinely looking after the team. Like Jack with paternity leave, I can't remember what he gave, but like 8 weeks full paternity pay for him to spend time with his kid,
Wow. Mm.
and not to have to think about work, just genuinely trying to look after people. And when we joined Sage, they had these huge offices in Manchester, so we had to kind of shut our office down and move part of their office. And I can't remember how many, like it was like after work from home it all kicked in, how many people they would get in their office. I don't know. 20% of staff would turn up on a regular basis, whatever it was. Ours was like 85, 90% of staff would be there all week round. And it's because we just created a great place where people wanted to be. We never had to tell people, you've got to be here. We just create an environment where people wanted to be there.
We'll get on to people and culture in a minute. What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
My big mindset shift. Okay, so my business was my marketing agency was failing. Things weren't kind of playing out well at home. I was kind of smoking a lot of weed because I just wasn't in control of things, and kind of that gave me a sense of control of some sorts. I was satisfying some needs through that. I ended up splitting up with my wife. That business failed, and like just in a bad place. And I went to a Tony Robbins event. Like a lot of people have got those type of stories, an Unleash the Power Within 4-day event, where I saw life being lived at another level. And like I was literally lifted off one path and placed on another path. And I got introduced obviously to Tony Robbins concepts, and I was always been aware of these people like Zig Ziglar, but Jim Rohn I'd never heard of before.
All
And
brilliant
then I
people.
went,
Yeah.
yeah, on a path of kind of studying Jim Rohn then, and learned some amazing things. And he said one thing, or he said many great things, which is don't, well, he's got a few variations of this, but don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. Stop blaming other shit and take responsibility for where it's not working for you, right? And another one he says is aim to be a millionaire in your life, not for the money, but for the person you'll have to become in order to get there. And I'm like, yeah, I just love this shit. And it was a 4 days that I just went off on this path. So Tony Robbins talks about these 4 basic needs: the need for certainty, the need for uncertainty and variety, the need for love and connection, and the need for significance. And we're all satisfying these needs either in a positive way or a negative way. Like you can achieve significance from being a strong member of the community by building a business and creating employment, or you can create significance by going and having a scrap in the pub or going home and kicking the dog. Like the significance, but you will be satisfying your need for significance. I guarantee it, either in a positive way or a negative way. I was satisfying my 4 needs through smoking weed. That was satisfying them. But here's the kicker: if you don't satisfy those first basic needs in a positive way, you can never evolve to the final 2 needs, which is the need for growth and the need for contribution. Like you can never ascend to those levels while ever you're satisfying any of them negatively. So once I started to learn to satisfy my first needs positively, I was just then, my big mind shift was, now I'm just going to keep growing. I'm going to keep learning, keep evolving, and I'm going to keep contributing. I'm going to keep giving it all away and passing back as much as I possibly can. And that was my big turning point.
Fantastic. The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
I'm not sure if it's a habit as such, but we need to have as much awareness as possible of ourselves and why we're thinking what we're thinking, because we all have blind spots, and it's the blind spots that's going to cause you the issue. And so we have to invite people from outside of ourselves, or whether it's friends or mentors or inviting feedback from team members or whatever it may be, to discover our blind spots. Like, whenever we used to do a review with team members, it was never a one-way thing. It was always a two-way thing. Like, where am I holding you back? Like, I would ask them that question. What one thing do I need? What do you have? What do I need to stop doing? What do you want me to stop doing? And what do you want me to start doing? Like, for you, that in terms of how I can help you. And basically you're inviting people to help you to figure out what these blind spots are. And we have to have that habit. And it's painful, isn't it? When someone says, oh yeah, you're being a complete dick here. you're like, shit. And you look over and there's like a 10, 50 ton truck or whatever about to wipe you out. The dick truck is about to take you out if you don't stop doing that. Are you with me? It's like, and it's like, and you're just not noticing it. Yeah. So you need people who love you and care for you enough to point that shit out to you. So I just think the habit of inviting people to point out your blind spots and where you kind of need to make course correction.
One or more of these growth pillars standing in the way of you living the lifestyle you've signed up for? People, strategy, marketing, funding, or systems. We have a free ebook filled with actions and templates on each of these growth pillars. Download for free from our website, growasmallbusiness.com.
Can you talk how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening? Because so far it sounds like you've absolutely aced bringing people onto the team, but surely there's a few fuck ups that you can educate the audience on and help them not make those mistakes.
We've certainly had a few fuck ups, and had to get rid of people, not getting rid of people quick enough.
Yep.
Especially I've been guilty of this when you've recruited, made a mistake, recruited again, made a mistake. And then the next time you're like, right, I'm going to prove to you that this wasn't a mistake, even though deep down you're thinking, fuck, you made another mistake. Fuck. and you daren't get rid of them. So you keep them going, hoping they're going to come good.
Well, Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Yes. Yeah. Admitting you were wrong with that one. But one thing we did really well with recruitment was that so one area that I'd studied previously, so I keep going back now. When my marketing agency failed, I went on a new path of growth. I started to invest in who I thought were the leading businesses in the world, reading their books, reading the best business mentoring books and coaches, and investing in coaching, traveling to the States to get learning, investing in courses and conferences, and building out my knowledge as much as I could. And then I started being a business consultant and sharing those concepts with businesses. So it became like a playground, right? So I was able to take these ideas and people would pay me to go and practice implementing them into their businesses. And they worked. A lot of them worked. They got refined very quickly if they didn't. And one of the big ones was around core values. So the main place I learned this from was a book called Delivering Happiness, which is the Zappos story. And he talks about the core values in there, which is how do we establish the character and values of the business and culture of the business, which is what they inform, to ultimately guide people's behavior on a day-to-day basis. And then I would go into businesses where they would have high-performing staff. So they had financial metrics, sales metrics perhaps, that team members had to hit, but they were absolute dicks, right? And because they had no metrics or ways to guide the behavior of people. And so I learned very quickly, we took this set of core values, largely from Zappos, because they've just got a really complete set. You use them as you as your guide, and you shape it up from there to guide the behavior. Most people, their core values that they implement into the businesses are shit. They're not useful. They don't mean anything. They don't follow through with them. And I will be writing a book at some point in the future. But one of my opening lines about core values is, if you are not prepared to fire your highest performing member of staff who constantly goes against your values, don't fucking bother. Like, just ditch it. It's a pointless exercise, right? There's a sales guy near us in the BMW garage in Dong, where I live. He's the biggest prick. He's the biggest sales guy, biggest prick sales guy I've ever met. We walked out of the showroom because of how rude he was to us when he realized we were going to go and look at the Audi garage, right? My brother I told my brother, he said, same thing happened to me. He'd gone to buy 2 BMWs, right? Him and his wife. He walked out of there. And then I heard of a third person who'd done the same thing. He was a bit dodgy, this guy. And it's like, but he's the highest performing sales guy in the showroom, right? But he's such a toxic person. How negatively is he influencing everyone else? If I was taking over that BMW garage, day one, you're sacked, right? Now let me work with the rest of the team and help to elevate you, because he's holding all of you back. Yeah. So we had a really good set of core values that guided behavior. We didn't have wanky words like integrity, which means nothing. We would have real words like always do what you say you're going to do. So now I know whether you've not done what you said you're going to do. We would employ by them. So we never wanted to see people's CVs or resumes because they're bullshit, especially with Chat GPT now. I can take your job spec, put it into Chat GPT and say, create me the best resume to land this job spec. They're bullshit. So we would say to people, right, these are our core values. Can you explain how you've met one or more of these core values, either in your life or your business? And we would ask for a 2-minute video from them, showing me how they would achieve these core values. If they weren't prepared to send a video through, which some people weren't, that was the end of the deal at that point, right? And so we would hire by values, we would train people in them, we would have champions every single month in them, and we would fire by them as well.
Well, I heard another guest say they actually went a little bit further on that step of the video, where they would actually get the last round of candidates come in and do a presentation in person on the core values of the company and how they align with them and their examples and behaviors. A lot of people would drop out because they didn't have the courage to do that, and the ones that obviously were a little bit shit obviously got filtered out as well. So that's yeah.
And the deal is they're not optional. You don't get to pick and choose. You have to take them all. If you don't understand them, not a problem. We'll work with you to get you to understand them and to ingrain them into your thinking. But if you're not prepared to take all of them, you're gone. That is it. And it was only when we became part of Sage, I remember Heather ringing me and saying, now you're part of another organization, so your values stand out more brightly because you've got something to hold them up against. I'm not saying that Sages were bad. They were just different to our values. Did she realize the full value of them?
What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Yeah, so I think it is the core values. It's all on the core values. And there's a couple that really stand out for me. One of them, do you know above and below the line thinking?
Yep.
So above the line is accountability, ownership and responsibility. I got those right. Yeah, accountability, ownership and responsibility. And below the line is blame, excuses and denial. And then we used to have a fourth D that we would put in, which was drama as well. So we don't do drama. Drama's a big one. For a drama to exist, you need a villain, a victim, and a motive. So it's not just that she's done that. She's done that because she knew that I was going to, and it's all that bullshit. When you get two people's dramas, you're fucked. Like them colliding together. So we above and below the line thinking was always a very useful device because it wasn't very confrontational. So if you've done something that was below the line, I don't have to call you out. I can say, do you think that was an above or below the line response? Okay, and what could you have done to have taken it above the line? And it's just a nice device for people to use. So it's creating that environment where people accept responsibility and don't blame. I hate it when you speak to a business and they'll blame shit. Like, look, I've ordered this from you. What? It's not arrived yet. Oh yeah, we had a problem with the couriers, and I'm like, yeah, you fucking chose the couriers. I didn't pick the couriers. You picked them. Like, it's your problem. You accept responsibility, where most people just like to blame. So I think that's a part of it. But then the other one, like I said earlier, was just having that culture where we're just going to be really honest with each other. I'm going to be honest with you, and you're going to be honest with me as well. Because otherwise, we're just not being fair. With the accounting firm, I remember there was this guy that was causing some real issues, and his line manager, I says, right, this is what you need to say to him and tell him that if he doesn't change what he's doing, on Friday, we'll sack him. So he came away and I said, did you have a chat with him? He said, yeah. I said, did you tell him all the things? He said, yeah, I really gave it to him. I said, cool. Did you tell him that on Friday, if he doesn't change X, Y, and Z, we're going to sack him? He said, oh, I didn't dare say that. I said, why? I said, you're being really unfair not to say that, because on Friday, I will sit down with him and I will fucking sack him. And so to not give him a chance to not fully understand the consequences and to give him a chance to course correct is not actually to be fair to people. And we have to have the courage to deliver that to people. And the big thing with culture is people allow toxic people to stay in companies. They'll typically be high performers, you know, but they need to go. And you can't be afraid to get rid of them because they'll be infecting people around them. They won't change. And a good one to sniff them out is the phrase "yeah, but," right? They're really good at this one. We're gonna launch this. We're gonna get all you guys to start posting more on social media. Yeah, but, and what they're actually saying, a yeah, but is a no in disguise. They want to sound like yes, but it's actually a no. And I remember I went to a big company a year or so ago, and there was this one guy there amongst the kind of 20 board members, and I said, and I knew about him anyway, and I said, how on board are you with this? He said, I'm 95% on board. That is a toxic person, because either be 100% on board or be 0% on board. But to be 95% on board is the yeah, but. I want to give the illusion, make the noises that I'm with everything, but I'm holding everything back. And so I always liken it to these people behind the rock. You have people behind the rock pushing it. You have people stood there saying, I'm not fucking pushing it. You push it, right? You have people pushing back down. But the worst people are the people with their hands on the rock. If you took them away, they're not doing anything. They're making all the right noises, right? And these are the toxic people. And I've said this to a few business owners recently. The moment you know that that person is the problem and you choose to do nothing about it, know that they are no longer the problem. You are.
You are. Yep. Totally.
You're the problem.
Yep. Totally agree with
You
that.
know, and so it's not being afraid to get rid of those people, and for the sake, and when you get rid of someone like that, right?
Everyone, and everyone relaxes in the room and they say, why the fuck didn't you do that sooner?
Yeah, and you're like, why the fuck didn't you tell me sooner that you thought I should get rid of him? Like why have we not just all had this conversation? It's this massive realization that everyone thought it. And when you stay and you stand up to the team and you say, I got rid of them. I don't care how good they are, how much business they brought in. I will not allow them to affect everyone in this room. I respect all of you far more than I respect what that person was bringing. Everyone's lifts, they will more than carry that person within a day or two. They won't be thought about again.
Totally agree. And
defend I think so with the culture, define the parameters of it and defend it to the death.
I mean, if they're a toxic arsehole and you've got A players on your team watching you not do anything, your inaction is going to rock them and they're going to walk out at the door. So you've got to act. And just back to a point you said it before about that person wasn't clear that if they don't change their behavior by Friday, you're going to sack them. And that's unfair. I don't know if you've read any Brene Brown, but one of her sayings that I love, which is clear is kind.
Yeah. Brene Brown's amazing.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this, which is, I think he talks about like not balance and imbalance, but counterbalance. In that, I think I've tried my best to maintain balance with certain things, taking the kids to and from school, never missing a school event, trying to set a day aside for my wife each week, and trying my best to stick to date night. Even though I do sometimes struggle with that one, but Thursdays are pretty much locked down now. I finally got there. But occasionally when you can't have that balance, I think it's creating counterbalance in those scenarios and being okay with that. So if there are times when you've got to get something over the line and it's going to take a week or a couple of weeks to just I'm just going to be locked away, guys. This is not going to be nice. I've got to do this, but this is how we're going to make up for it on the other side of it. And then we're going to go away. I'm going to leave my phone at home. I'm going to lock it in the drawer. I'm not going to take it with us. You're going to get me fully. So I think it's to be aware of those times of imbalance and to counterbalance it. And you can't be imbalanced for too long. That's going to really put strain on the relationship, on everybody's relationship, isn't it? So, and I'm saying this, and I think if I brought my wife in, you'd get a different view of what balance is.
Well, there's three sides to every story: his, hers, and the truth.
Yeah, and the other difficult thing is, like, I love what I do. Like I just love work. I love working, and it's difficult. So, like, my wife was a nurse, so her term work is not a nice shift work. It's graft. It's not enjoyable necessarily. where for me, it's my mission. I love creating content or building out a process or whatever it may be. Like, it's exciting to me. And so when I say I'm working tonight, her concept of work is, why the fuck would you work and not want to spend time with me? And it's like, yeah, but you're not understanding what I see as work, so that's a hard thing to explain, isn't it, to people who are not that way out.
Totally agree. How much professional development have you invested in yourself? Sounds like a fair bit. I mean, you talked about the Tony Robbins stuff, and I assume you've read a lot of books as well over the years, courses, books, etc.
So yeah, so professional development, I think, comes in various forms, whether it's in books. So I would aim to be reading every single day. I would do audio books because I could get through them a lot quicker if I'm driving somewhere. I'm an hour in the gym. I don't want to be part of a CrossFit class where I have to engage with other people. I'd much prefer to do a lone class where I can have, or be on my own, where I can have my headset on and do an hour of learning as well. So creating situations where I can be constantly learning. We had a non-exec in the
I'll pause you there because you sound like your brother from another mother. I only listen to audiobooks and podcasts on 1.5 speed when I'm driving, I'm taking the dog to the park, I'm shooting hoops in the sun. Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. We would have non-execs in the business and I would kind of move through them. So once I'd kind of, if we had one in for 6 months or 12 months and I got to the point where I'm like, right, I think I've got what I'm going to get from this person now. There's nothing particularly new coming this way. I would switch them out and bring in the next person to keep evolving that way. So that was a form of investment, albeit you kind of have them in a board meeting and various things. I created my own mastermind groups with just brilliant entrepreneurs that I knew myself. So this wasn't an investment of money, but of time, of going and nurturing friendships and spending time with them. And they're probably some of the best people, like just incredible entrepreneurs. I've got a great friend of mine called Paul Gough, Gough, worth checking out. He built 3 successful physio practices here in the UK, and then went to America and trained physios in America how to replicate what he's done here now. He's the leading authority on kind of how to build physio practices. He's a monster marketer. Like, the level that he's invested at, hundreds of thousands of pounds. Like, he's in Dan Kennedy's one-on-one like coaching groups and various things. So he showed me how. So I have sessions with him because I know where he's investing. So I kind of get it by proxy. Courses, online courses, Justin Welsh, the LinkedIn guy, I've just bought his course last week, actually. So I'm going to take his online course. So all these little short courses, Simon Sinek's got a great little online presentation course. There might be like $20 or $50. It doesn't have to be a lot. The big thing with any of the learning and professional development is you've got to be applying it. You've got to approach it like a student and then apply. And if ever and what can happen with it is people get their high on the learning of it. So I remember going to my first Tony Robbins event, and a friend of mine went the following year, and then he said, I'm going to again the next year. You coming with me? I'm like, no, I'm going to resist. I'd love to, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to apply the shit instead. Like, you can soon get hooked on and you see the same people going from one conference to the next or one mentoring, and they're not actually applying it. So you really have to look at, not just getting your fix from getting the nice bit of new education, but I don't know what the ratio should be, but is it like 1 hour of learning to 10 hours of implementation or 100 hours of implementation? I don't actually know. And if I get to a point where I'm just soaking it in for the sake of soaking it in, I stop. I will stop audiobooks. I will stop learning. I will shut it all down and work with what I've got until I get to a point where I feel now I need something new. Now I'm stuck again. I need to go again.
I love Alex Mosey's take on this, where he says that if you go to a conference or you read a book and you listen, you learn, but you do nothing, then you've learnt nothing. If you haven't actually done any action from what you've heard, instructions, whether it's a book or a speaker, you actually haven't learned anything. Nothing's changed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And maybe talk about mentors or coaches you've had along the way.
One of the best ones was I messaged him this week, actually. I just sent him a voice note just to say, I'm not messaging you for any other reason. I'm not spoken to him for maybe a year, just to say that you are the single person that's had the greatest impact on my life. and I just want to tell you how you've done that, and I just want to thank him. So he was a pastor in a church not too far from us, and not like a conventional church. It was like a, I don't know what church it would be, but like a modern church, I guess.
Clearly,
And
clearly one that allows swearing. Yep.
yes, yeah. And he was in a Bradford's quite a bit of a rough, rundown northern ex-industrial town. Probably a textiles was it back in the day, but no more. And he built this church, and he noticed that it was all white middle class people coming to it, even though that wasn't reflective of the um, the environment. And so he started to kind of put buses on, free buses that would go into the town and pick people up from different areas. And all of a sudden, different color people turning up, prostitutes, homeless people. He would bring them all in. And his congregation dropped to next to nothing, like 200 people. And that was his core. And he built back up from there. Now that church has just 3 sermons on a Sunday, has busloads of people turning up. You know, they don't just pass a hat round to put money in. It's like a card machine for a subscription comes around, like they're beasts. And at the time, I was never like I wasn't religious. I didn't kind of believe in organized religion, but I felt there was a force of goodness in the world. That was a higher force of goodness. That was the extent of my belief. And he interpreted the Bible in a very accessible way and just shared all these stories. And I just bought every audio book he ever had and just devoured it all for months and months and months. And then he does some brilliant talks. One is about communicating with authenticity, and he's the best speaker. He's like, he's in he must be in his 60s. Like, I'm a very straight heterosexual man, but if I had a man crush, he's like the fittest 60-year-old man,
Yeah.
mid 60-year-old man. Paul Scanlon is called. Brilliant, brilliant speaker. And he's the person that I've singularly learnt the most from.
Did you have a board of directors or advisors at Go Proposal?
No, I had Paul, who's the other partner, the other director. I had a non-exec I brought in. But in the last year, I dropped them because or maybe even before that, because I knew where we were going. I knew what we needed to do. I had a clear path. I didn't want any further distractions or anyone taking me off course. I knew where we were going. Paul was very surprised by the decision, but I was very clear that we've got what we need now. We're just going to drive this over the line. Here we go. So I at that point, I cut out. I didn't want anything new. I could see the finish line, and I knew we had what we had in the tank to get over the line. You know.
Now, you're one of the few that we've had on the cast that has exited the business. We'll link through to the show note, to John's show notes on the episode you did with him. Sorry, the 2 episodes you did with him. But do you have any advice for owners listening to this, thinking about exiting one day? Just a couple of things you might want to convey to them.
Yeah, so we were clear at the start of the business that we were going to exit, and before we got our first customer, the business was called Go Proposal, and I identified the 4 likely buyers of the business, and I wrote underneath each logo: Go Proposal, a Sage product; Go Proposal, a Zero product; Go Proposal, a QuickBooks product, to kind of manifest that. And I did a post about this recently about the term manifestation and manifesting. People think that manifesting is thinking of it and sitting there and hum and bringing it into your life. The word manifest means to grab hold. The original definition is to grab hold of quite aggressively of something. So yeah, I manifested it in that I had a vision of where we're going, and then I worked my bollocks off. Like, I developed relationships with every one of those companies. I spoke at all of their events. I invited them onto our webinars. I did everything I possibly could to nurture relationships with those businesses to give myself the best chance of selling to them. So I think having a clear vision of who you might want to sell to, knowing what amount you want to sell for, which is a financial planning exercise probably done with a financial advisor, to understand what that point looks like, if that's what you want to do. Making sure that you got a full suite of playbooks for every single thing in your business, because that's ultimately going to determine the standard of everything, from the way that if a visitor turns up at your offices, how they are offered a cup of coffee, like literally down to how emails are sent, every single thing, phone calls scripted, every single thing you cannot leave to chance. And people might think you're a dick by doing that. And that's absolutely fine. The shock and awe pack I referred to earlier, we had a picture on the wall, a step-by-step guide of how that had to look when it got sent out, because there was once they went sent out and all the stamps were pissed on the envelopes. I'm like, we're not sending them out with the stamps pissed. And they're like, they'll still get there. And I'm like, yeah, but that's the first impression of our business. And it's just as easy to put it on straight as it is pissed. So let's do one together. Let's put it up here. This is the checklist, and this is the check for the checklist to make sure we're doing it right. So it, and people used to say to me, as you grow, your standards are going to drop. And I say, yeah, if you let them, and I'm not going to let them. So we maintain those standards throughout. And then you've got to have your finances in order. Like, you need 3 years of monthly management accounts. The moment you speak to anyone about buying your business, the first question they're going to say is, send me the last 3 years of monthly management accounts. And if you can't send that to them within 10 minutes of that phone call, you look like you have not got your shit together. Like, you can't find it in the file. You haven't got it. They're not ready to go, whatever. That should be in a file where you can go, yeah, ping, there's the link. Let's go. What would you need to see?
Yeah, as John Warlow talks about when we had him on the podcast, the two main reasons people are acquired is a health issue. Either the owner or one of their family members, they need to sell, or they get approached. And in both situations, no one's prepared. And so you are already on the back foot. You're going to get a lower sale price. So if you are thinking of exiting one day, start that journey now. Listen to John's 3 books and his Built to Sell radio podcast, which you've been on, which is amazing. So I really encourage owners, if they're thinking seriously one day of exiting, because I think 90% of his businesses put on the market never actually sell.
Yeah. But here's the thing as well, Troy, is that everyone exits the business.
Yep. One way or another. Boots out.
Guaranteed you're going to exit your business.
Yeah, that's right.
So you might as well plan for it and prepare for it and be ready and get ready as fast as possible. Because if your business is exitable, it's also franchisable, scalable. It means it will run on its own. It achieves all the other things as well. So it gives you the most number of options possible.
Yeah.
And you want to get to that option point. So you don't want an exit strategy. You want a multiple option strategy as fast as possible, because you have no idea what's coming in the future. Your life situation may change. You have no idea. And the best way to be able to adapt to it is to be prepared for it by getting yourself to a point where you are exitable now. That's what you want to do. And then just a final part on that. When you're going through the process, you want to make sure you've got great advisors around you.
Yeah.
And then just what someone said to me was, beware of ghosts. Because I was just so worried about all the things that could possibly go wrong. And when I look back, for like 9 months, I was just traumatized at being fearful of these ghosts, that none of them came to fruition.
Yep. Like I said before, Mark Twain, I've had many troubles in my life, some of which actually happened.
Yeah.
All right, James, one of our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
I think it's all hard. It's like we know the stats, most businesses fail. And then to build a business that's actually successful is such a rare thing. But I think the hard bit is back to the balance again that we talked about earlier. And it's difficult because if you look at, this is a complete answer that you're not expecting it. If you look at indigenous tribes, the hunter-gatherer aged people, me and you, we're off each day, leave the kids, pass them to the grandparents, and me and you are off with spears, chasing down animals and hunting, right? Because we're strong and we're fit and we can go and catch it. And we're not as clever as the old people, right? The old people have the wisdom and the knowledge. They're far better off raising the kids than us. So the elders should be raising the grandchildren. We're off hunting and gathering, and then we switch roles. We then move into that role of the elder, and then the kids go off, and then we raise the grandchildren. That is how nature intended it to be, right? The problem is that we don't live in that world. We live in the world where we're hunter-gatherer, and we're meant to have all the knowledge, and we're meant to raise. Someone said to me, the problem when you have kids, the problem you have is that you're an amateur parent and they're a professional child, right? So
love it.
you have all this shit, and you expect it to go and do all this stuff. It's almost impossible to win at. And so I think it's that balance and being kind to yourself in that you're a human being on planet Earth with all of your perfect imperfections, doing your best, just fucking doing your best, you know, and just that knowledge, especially if you've got kids, that you've got multiple startups.
Yep. Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
E-Myth Revisited was the
Yep.
first book I ever read that's the most thumbed and worn. But then actually John Warrillow's Built to Sell was the second book that distilled that down, and I think is a better version of E-Myth Revisited.
Did you read, did you read John that Built to Sell before you sold the business?
Oh, yeah. I read it way before I started the business.
Yeah. Wow. Oh,
yeah.
Hmm.
When I built Grow Proposal, it was built to sell.
Yeah.
The team knew it was built to sell. Everyone knew it was built to sell. That was the premise. I love Daniel Priestley's stuff. Key Person of Influence is a really good book that guided a lot of my thinking. And one of the marketing books that's like just I love, because I know a lot about marketing, but this one, just one that slaps you in the face with so much good stuff, is They Ask You Answer.
Yes, it's on my list. I saw it today, actually, scrolling through all.
Mate, you got to read, you got to listen to it. In fact, a mate of mine who I've been helping with a few years, I told him to read it, and he rang me up so pissed off the other week. He said,
he hadn't read
"Why
it
the
earlier.
fuck didn't you tell me to read this sooner?" I'm like,
Yeah.
I did tell you to read it sooner. So I think that is a big one.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools used for your own professional development?
You know what? I'm pretty late to the podcasting world. I love Joe Rogan. I think he's one of the best podcasters because he doesn't try to impose himself too much on the listeners. Like he's kind of happy being this stupid role of, oh, why is that? And I don't understand that. And kind of assumes this character, but is actually deeply intelligent and thoughtful and wonderful. So I love that. A lot of the podcasts actually irritate me. I'd like to develop an app, and this is not, I wouldn't do this with you, an app where I could cut out the interviewer, the main podcast host, so I don't have to listen to their bullshit interjections and just focus on the guests. The High Performance podcast is one in the UK that's really, really good. And there's two hosts on that. One of them I'd like to block out, and the other one is brilliant. Like, I don't like when they cut a guest short, even because sometimes they might have a very considered guest who just needs time to think of an answer, and there's a pause. And when they kind of interject in, I'm like, just shut up, just give him time. He'll figure it out. So, yeah, the Diary of a CEO. This is gonna be the first time I've ever said this publicly, but Stephen Bartlett winds me up. But I love his guests that he interviews, and so I have to listen to it. But like, I have to listen to it in bite-sized pieces because I get irritated by him.
Yeah, I've just finished his book. I haven't listened to any of the podcasts yet, but don't know. Yeah, jury's out for me on that one.
Yeah, but his guests are great. But there's something just.
He's Manchester as well, isn't he?
Yeah, doesn't sound like he's from Manchester, but he's from Manchester.
No, haven't watched any of the. It's Dragon's Denny's on in the UK? Is that right?
Yeah, that irritates me. I swear. In the car on the way to school in the morning, every morning we watch a Dragon's Den. I don't watch it, I'm driving, but we put a Dragon's Den on, and the kids will listen to it on the way and watch it on the way to school. And I'll pause it and we'll comment and shit like that. And he's on there. We were talking earlier about whether it's appropriate to swear in front of the kids or not.
Yeah.
It's the only person that makes go, shut the fuck up, Stephen. Just fuck. Like, it just really irritates me. Just let the other people speak.
Yeah.
So that's what the kids hear from me in the morning.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
I think that email is still the best form of marketing. Like, you don't own Instagram, you don't own YouTube channel, you can be shut down off there. If you can, nurture an email list and build that and communicate to it regularly, it's still the best content, man. Especially if you can be good at writing. It's a captured audience. If I'm on YouTube watching a video, there's also 20 videos at the side vying for my attention. When I'm in that email, you've just got me as a captive audience. So I still believe in it. We used to use Infusionsoft, which I was a big fan of for many, many years. I still like it as a product. It's a bit complicated, but Go Higher Level is the one that's out there now that I've not used myself, but I'm working with a few businesses that are using it. And the capabilities of that is ridiculous. It takes like what I'd have had to have assembled kind of 4 or 5 pieces of software together, and it brings all of that together as a central marketing tool. The AI capabilities are fantastic. And you can build out online courses and various things in it very cheaply, very quickly. So that would be the one that I'd be really excited about using. I'm about to invest in a couple of businesses, and I'm going to be implementing that straight away into both those businesses.
It's something I early on school business owners that email is not dead. The money is actually in the list. Direct Marketing Association in America publish every year the ROI on different channels, and the last stats I saw, for every dollar you invest in email marketing, you get $44 back. The next best is SEO at 22, and social ads is $20. So people think, oh, I don't want to email my list too often, I'll piss them off, I'll get unsubscribes, but the money is in the list.
Yeah.
Finally, my favorite question: what would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
I always remember it's a really boring phrase, and it was when I was at the Tony Robbins event. And it was, I can't what the other guy was called on the stage. He just said this one thing, and I think going back to myself and saying that to me is, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. Like whatever, it's all going to be all right. And I think in our minds as entrepreneurs, as creative people that are able to think through solutions and problems and things, our minds naturally wander as well and go down darker avenues sometimes and catastrophize situations as to where things can go wrong. What you were saying earlier about, most of the problems that actually happen. And it's to know that it'll be okay. Like, even if you lost everything, like, you can sometimes play out the catastrophe. Okay, your business fails, you lose everything, you lose your house, you have to move back with your family and your kids back in with your parents. And then what? Well, we'd be okay. Okay. So you're going to be all right. So it's just to know that even in those, when things can go wrong, it's still going to be all right. And it's just the idea of just calming it down and being okay and being kind to yourself, because, entrepreneurs, you put yourself under tremendous pressure for the sake of your family, for the sake of your team, for your customers. You help so many people, and you're burdened in ways that most people will never appreciate. And they will see the trappings that come with the success, etc. And they'll think you've had it easy, or they'll think you've had lucky breaks and whatever. They have no idea how long you've been underground for, and how you felt buried, and how you've pushed your way through. And so it's just to know that you're gonna get there, and whatever happens, you're gonna be okay.
Sage advice, James. No pun intended. Thank you so much for the chat. We could speak for another 2 hours. It's now been over 2 hours. We've gone all Joe Rogan on this episode, our longest episode yet, but really appreciate your time. Have been looking forward to having the chat for quite some time, and should have known better, because John had to publish your podcast over 2 episodes. So it was been great to chat. So really appreciate your time.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, man. Cheers.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.